Boom. You're live on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. And for those who don't know, I'm Teddy. And thanks to Randy's help, I am now completely organized with my attire and my color coordination. Yes. Thank you, Randy. And today our special guest is Katherine Perry. We'll tell you a little bit more about her in a minute, but momentarily. But first, let me thank our sponsor, Blackwell Captive Solutions. They're all about healthcare, insurance. They're all about a stopgap loss. They're all about helping businesses who are self-insured to make sure that they're paying the right dollar for their health insurance and giving their employees the right health insurance, but making sure that there's transparency in what they're seeing. They're tracking every dollar so that they're getting the greatest value. So if you're have a self-insured healthcare insurance for your employees, and you don't have a shock absorber associated with that thing or a stopgap loss, then you need to call Blackwell Captive Solutions and ask them, what the heck is Teddy talking about? Hey, Frank, I was given creative freedom to change up the words this morning. So how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm good.
Well, I'll let you finish up your work while I introduce myself to everyone who you've never met me before. I'm a LinkedIn strategist, trainer, and coach. I do one-on-one coaching, corporate training, do public speaking. I do webinars and seminars, and I'll actually go beat somebody up if they're not using LinkedIn right if you pay me to do that. Oh, should I cut that part out, Randy? So if your organization or you needs help with LinkedIn, reach out and let's have a conversation. I promise you I will change up my satire. Randy, are you done?
I am. I think we're fully functional on Facebook and LinkedIn, and so we're ready to roll today. Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, back to start our fourth year, Teddy. It's the kickoff of our fourth year together. I run a professional center here based in Winston, but have clients around the country, mostly here in the Triad. If you or maybe somebody you know is in a job search or maybe thinking about it, or maybe you've got an adult child graduating from college pretty soon and you want to get him kicked out of your basement, all those things, we're happy to help get you on the calendar. But every week, Teddy and I get together and we learn stuff. And today's no exception. Katherine Perry returns to talk about community engagement. Katherine is the executive director for Leadership Winston-Salem. Katherine, welcome. It's been a little while since we've talked. So
has been a minute or two. I'm happy to be back.
Now, a couple things here, just as we get started. Teddy's going to keep an eye on the chat box. So if you have an area you'd like to talk about or comments you'd like to make, whatever, for Katherine, put those in the chat. Teddy will keep an eye on that. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about Leadership Winston-Salem. And of course, you're in your recruitment phase right now. So we'll get the word out about that. But from a broader perspective, we're going to talk a little bit more about community engagement. What is it? Who does it benefit? How do you get involved? And we'll also get kind of a background on you, Katherine, too, as far as what brought you here and some of the things that you're involved with leadership, and also on your personal level and some of the engagement you have in the community as well. So let's get started. Katherine, why don't you introduce yourself in a little more detail?
Sure. So my name is Katherine Perry. As Randy said, I'm the executive director of Leadership Winston-Salem. If I might be so bold as to give a special shout out to a member of our audience who is with the class of 2023, Butch Noah, or Manuelo Noah, as he is listed in your participant list.
Okay.
Butch is one of the members of the most connected class ever, which is their class superlative that they decided on last month. So super excited that he was able to join us today. I am originally from Winston-Salem, grew up here. My family has lived in Winston forever. And as the only member of my family who decided to meander outside the confines of Forsyth County, I've actually lived all over the state, with one foray out of the state to a tiny little town called Bristol, Tennessee, which folks might know from the NASCAR circuit. Spent 3 years up there and came back, went to work for the Arts Council of Winston-Salem, Forsyth County as their marketing director. And then in 2017, had the great fortune of filling an empty position at Leadership Winston-Salem as their program director. And I sat in that position from 2017 to 2021, where my predecessor, Robert Eggleston, yay, Piney Flats, Robert retired actually bumped into him this morning and said, I don't think I'll ever forgive you for retiring, as we were in December of 2020, when
Mhm.
nothing particular was going on besides a pandemic, and we were doing all of our program virtually. So he decided it was time for him to take a part-time executive director position and said, but I encourage you to apply for the job, which I did, and became the executive director in February of 2021. I often say that working for Leadership Winston-Salem is the best job that I have ever had. I work with the most amazing people, both on my team and in the community, that are volunteers for our organization. And it is second to none. I'm sorry for anybody that works in the nonprofit field, but this is the best nonprofit ever, of course. And what we do is
I'm
just
shocked you would say that.
amazing. I know, weird to choose that specific turn of phrase.
I know it. I know it. Wow.
So, and then about me personally, I have
Yep.
3 kids, that none of whom live in my basement. So I'm super excited about that.
How about that?
One is a full-fledged adult working in a job in his industry. So yay. And then 2 are in college, and they're on the cusp of almost graduating, but have just informed me that they're going to take a little bit longer. They're going to do a extra lap, as it were,
Extra lap.
in school.
An
So-
extra lap.
Yeah.
So you've been in the nonprofit world pretty much all of your professional career, I guess, or close to it, right?
My entire professional career, yes.
Yeah. So what's your why? I always ask that. What got you excited about it in the first place and keeps you chugging along all these years in the nonprofit world?
I like to work really hard, and I don't like money. So this is a good fit.
Teddy, that's what I've been telling Teddy all this time. I work my tail off and I'm still bread and water. Teddy
He works for 2 non-profits, Catherine.
Well, he does it because he's a glutton for punishment. That's all I can say about him. So why? My why?
Yeah.
Well, when I was in senior in high school, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, actually in the last few months of my year. And I spent my summer transporting her back and forth to chemotherapy treatments until I left for Carolina, which, by the way, 92 graduate of UNC Chapel Hill in the field of journalism. Go Tar Heels. Despite an abysmal basketball season, I still do cheer for them. So it was during that time that I realized what I wanted to do was graduate from school and do something to make a difference, rather than just going into a profession where I didn't feel emotionally connected or engaged. It was really important to me to give back to the community, because I really grew up very privileged. The community gave me a whole lot. And so I felt like it was important for me to pay it forward to generations behind me and to the remainder of my community.
Yeah. Good deal. And again, if you have comments or questions for Catherine, please put those in the chat, and Teddy will work those in if he has something to add there. So let's start with, I guess, a definition. I know this may sound kind of basic, but you talk about community engagement. How do you define that? What is community engagement to you?
So I think it might be better to start with what's community. And a lot of people think of community as the group of people, or even geographically speaking, that which immediately surrounds them, maybe where their home is, or the people that are like them. In truth, I define community as, like, for me, as a resident of technically Pofftown, I considered community to be most immediately Forsyth County. So when I say I want to engage in the community, I want to, and I encourage through my program, folks to engage with all of Forsyth County. That doesn't mean neighbors that look just like me, or neighbors that have a background just like mine. That means all of my neighbors on this side of 52, all of my neighbors on that side of 52, all of my neighbors who care and are invested in this community, that live in this community, that play in this community, that work in this community. And community engagement, therefore, would be ways to invest yourself that will improve life for you and for your neighbors, for all of the people in your immediate community, your immediate being the geographic community around you of Forsyth County, specific to this conversation.
I wonder too, it is, you know, you hear the old thing, it's sort of like with voting, like, you know, what's one vote? Why should I bother? Why should I care? What difference is that going to make? And I wonder too, you know, sometimes you can look at challenges as insurmountable, or like, what can one guy do? So why bother? And I'm sure there's you know, you've got a response to that, but I can think of people I've known in my life who have that attitude. Is like, I'm not going to make any difference, so why should I try? And how do you encourage people to get off the bench and get in the game?
I think we should all find ourselves invested,
Mhm.
because it does just take one person. It takes one person to start that domino effect. It takes one person to care, to pull another person in and another person, to connect resources with needs. It doesn't have to be, well, I've rallied everybody in my neighborhood and we're all going to do X. It could just be you. And you playing a role in your community can make a big difference. You might have somebody who sees you work 2 part-time or 2 nonprofit jobs. Clearly, you're dedicated. You're dedicated not just to the concept of not making money, but to the good of our community. And that might inspire somebody else. You know what? I'm retired. I have more time on my hands than I originally did. And God, if Randy can work 2 nonprofit jobs, who's to say that I couldn't volunteer for a nonprofit where
Mhm.
my skills and talents would be useful? And it just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of emotional investment to
Mhm.
make a difference in some really significant and meaningful ways for people who need help.
Yeah, Teddy, what you got?
You know, I often hear this, Catherine, you may have, Randy, well, you may have heard this as well, where people will compare themselves to others whom they see out there doing great things. And they go, I'm not like X. I don't have
Mhm.
the connections that X has. I don't have the dollars. I don't have the influence that X has. Who in you know,
Yeah.
X are lots of different people that we know in the community who we see on a regular basis, highly invested in our community to have some positive impact again for the community. And I think that's just a missed opportunity for people. When you talk about why is community engagement important, how can we get more people out there? Don't compare yourself to others. We all have something to offer, and that could be something really simple, or it could be something profound enough to get picked up by the local news, etc. But often what we as individuals can do doesn't have to get picked up by the news for it to be meaningful.
I agree 100%. And here's the for example. So I am a nonprofit executive, and we are nonprofit in every definition, or every way, shape, and form. To that end, I do not have a lot of extra disposable income to donate to other nonprofit organizations. As I mentioned before, I have 2 college-age children that are living in my wallet as we speak. But I do have time on Friday afternoons, because our office closes at noon,
Mhm.
to go volunteer, to spend some time doing something that's of benefit to somebody else. And these things are huge. Like, for example, prior to COVID, now everything has changed since COVID for me, like everybody else. Prior to COVID, I spent Friday afternoon about a 2-hour time slot delivering meals for Meals on Wheels.
Mhm.
And when I brought that lunch to each of these senior citizens, it was a game changer for them every single day. And I am just one person who had a little bit of extra time and a vehicle. And that's all I had to offer at that time and stage of my life. But boy, did it make a difference for those folks.
Yeah.
So I don't have Robert Eggleston levels of money, my predecessor. I can't, stroke those checks. I'm not a retired person yet, so I don't have hours to invest,
Mhm.
but I do know a person or 2, and I can say, hey, person over here who has this need, let me connect you with this person over here who has this resource. And I feel like for me personally, that's one of the best things that I can do in this community. Our organization, Leadership Winston-Salem, is located on 6th Street in a building that also houses the Winston-Salem Street School. It's a great organization. They do a lot of good work. They don't have a cafeteria there for their students. So they rely on the community to provide lunch for the kids at the school. And so once a year, I make a couple of pans of lasagna, buy a couple of bags of salad, a whole great big thing of garlic bread, and me and Robert go over on the other side of the sidewalk and take them lunch. I mean, it's just a small thing, but if we don't do it, those kids don't eat lunch that day. So, I mean, I think the small moves are sometimes the biggest moves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of falls back into that first topic area to talk about is what does community engagement look like? And it can take, like, if I'm hearing you right, everything from writing a check to delivering meals to, pounding nails to, or like Lloyd and I and a couple, three others, a couple of weeks ago, we helped with Habitat in the mud.
I saw those pictures. You guys were covered in mud. That was awesome. And thank you.
We got kind of dirty doing that, but anyway, it was one of those things. Once you get a little on you, it was like, what's a little more, right? So just dive in and do it. But sometimes that whole getting off the bench and making time for it, that first step, it's almost like when you go in the ocean and it's kind of cold and you're like, but once you're in it, you're in it. And do you have any, I don't know, encouragement or anything, or anything that you found that is helpful to reach out to people and inspire them? I know you've touched on some of that stuff, but is there any, I don't know, a formal process or almost like a job fair kind of a thing where here are all organizations? How do you kind of put the willingness of the people with the opportunity? How do you kind of match that up in the community?
So there are organizations out there who have volunteer placement services. Love Out Loud is one of those organizations where you can basically go to their page. They have a number of different first serve opportunities. And by first serve opportunities, I mean like a one and done. So for example, if you you've got a little bit of time, but you're not sure if this is what you want to do in perpetuity, you can find a volunteer opportunity on their website, click on that, invest your time there to see if this suits you. What I do at Leadership Winston-Salem, because we have been around since 1984, graduating people into the community trusteeship after a 9-month program where we educate people on the ins and outs of what makes this community unique and special and our challenges and our benefits. I have nonprofits that contact me with regularity to say, hey, I know what your program's all about, and we have positions on our board, and I'm looking for someone who has been through your program because they know more about the community than most, but is also a millennial, a person of color, a person with legal experience, a person who can handle fundraising strategies. And so I go through this, we've got 3,000 plus alumni. And so I go through and find out, okay, I've got these core people who have expressed an interest in this kind of, like, they love animal welfare. They're really leaning towards health and human services. And so I plug them into these opportunities, or I ask them, are you interested? And then they go on to invest or have an interview with these nonprofit organizations to see if it's a good fit for them.
What about, you mentioned the organization, and maybe Teddy, you can put it in the chat. What was that organization again that can help match people up?
Love Out Loud.
Love Out Loud.
Love Out Loud. So good stuff. So you ever have anybody ask for, middle-aged bald guys that, need, want to plug into?
You're my most favorite demographic, Randy.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, moving right along. All right. So community engagements. That's our topic today. Katherine Perry, Executive Director for Leadership Winston-Salem, is our guest. And so we've touched on this, but I'll just throw it at you again. Why is this important? Why the whole concept of community engagement? Why is it important? And I guess you can break it in two ways. Why is it important for the giver and the receiver and the community as a whole? So 3 ways.
Well, so it's important for the giver in a lot of ways because it gets you outside your routine. So for me and for Randy and for Teddy, I'm sure, you get up, you do about the same kind of thing every day, give or take, a few degrees of difference from one day to the next. Your travel path takes you to the same places, you interact with the same people, you come home, you go to bed, you start all over again. When you engage in the community, when you decide you're going to volunteer for, let's say, the Winston-Salem Street School, you take a different path. You interact with different people. You expose yourself to folks you probably wouldn't have an opportunity to get to know under other circumstances. And it makes your life more robust. It makes their life more robust because they're getting to interact with somebody who is different from them. It's not the same thing every day, day in and day out. So and let me backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
When you think about it in terms of, if you're thinking about it from professional development, for example, when you're engaged in the community, you know more about your community, you're invested in a community. As an employer, I truly do look for people when I have a job opening who are invested in this community, because I know that their likelihood of staying is much higher if they're already invested in community engagement opportunities, that I don't have to then hope that they're going to stick around for a little bit longer. If you're not invested in the community, there's nothing to keep you from uprooting and going somewhere else to find a better job, a better paycheck. But if you are invested or engaged in your community and you're involved in this board and that board, and you know more about your community, the odds of you staying with me as a parking space rather than a stepping stone are much, much higher.
Yeah.
So I think it is a good opportunity. Plus, when you engage in the community, the networking opportunities that unfold before you are much, much higher. Now, Randy, I know that you're with a team of people from last year's leadership class, but you guys weren't the only people out there working on that build. And
Right.
something tells me that odds are pretty good, being the extrovert that you are, that you might have talked to some of those other people that were out there also working on that build.
I asked him, how do you get red clay out of clothing and, and shoes? But no, we did talk, and I'm not going to say any of them became lifelong friends, but I will say this: on my way out of there, I talked to one of the new homeowners who'd been in the house for about a year, and he didn't. I'm not going to be overly melodramatic here, but then he didn't break down in tears or anything. But we chatted for probably 2 or 3 minutes, and just genuine thankfulness, and he just says, "You guys rock what you're doing," and again, not that I was kind of looking for one of those. I just happened to see the guy, and like, hey, I said, "Hey, so are you living here as a result of?" And he goes, "Yeah," and so he was unloading stuff from his car and helped him carry it to his house, and just chatted with him for a couple of minutes. Kind of cool. So there's some side benefit there as well, but I guess it all starts with a desire to get in the game a little bit, to see what else you can do that might break out of your comfort zone. Teddy, I know you've done a lot of volunteering and a lot of giving of your time too. So anything you want to share about that?
When in 2009, when I was, and I think Katherine knows this story a little bit. I know you've heard it, Randy. In 2009, when I went to start my business, I went and talked to some people who have very successful businesses. And I asked them, tell me something that's made your business successful. And I probably talked to 50 people, but there were 2 or 3 that were really instrumental in helping my wife and I decide how to create our business. And a lot of them said, you got to make sure you're giving away what you can give away. And one really good friend of mine told me, he says, give, but make sure that when you're giving, you don't turn yourself into a mission, which he said, don't give so much you can't afford to do it. When that was in the context of time and dollar. And so my wife and I decided to put together a business to where we had very structured processes for giving away our time and our dollars. Now, Randy and Katherine and everybody in our audience, here's what was really, really meaningful about that. It was not hard to do. It was easy to do, but we noticed, my wife and I would, we have a P&L, we manage our, our balance sheet, manage all that stuff every month. We talk about it. And I remember some months going by where revenue wasn't what we expected. Opportunities were not what we expected. And my wife and I would look and see what we did. And more often than not, those losses of opportunities, losses of revenue aligned with, I'm not saying we're a result of, but aligned with, we were also not giving away enough, as much time as we normally give away, or dollars that we give away. And so from the context of how's this important to the giver, I clearly remind myself every day that the more I give with no expectations of anything in return, the more benefits I get.
Yeah. And I know you give away, give away time, and I do too. I mean, it's my job to help job hunters, but I get asked to do some other things that are kind of sort of related. And I'm always happy to do that because Well, because I can, and I have the time, the willingness, and the whatever to do it. But it just feels, I hate to be mushy about it, but it feels good. It just does. It feels good when you get out and you can do something to help somebody.
Well, if you're looking at it from a perspective other than just, what feels good and what speaks to your moral compass, and you're trying to look for more pragmatic reasons for why you might engage in the community, it's important to remember that all ships rise with a swelling tide. So what helps my neighbors really does help me. Sadly, Forsyth County has the second worst economic mobility rate in the country, not in the state, in the country. So if I'm doing something that's helping my neighbors change their economic mobility outcome, that's really going to improve the entire community. And if it improves the entire community, how could it not improve my life personally? So if you're doing it for reasons of, I need something to be gained, that should stand out above a lot. Yeah. If it helps them, it is helping you.
Yeah. Indirectly. Yeah. I mean, it's not, it creates a lot of good ripple effect. I guess I can put it that way. A lot of stuff that we're going to cover. I know we've got a break coming up in a few minutes. So if you have comments or questions for Katherine, put them in the chat area. I think we've seen a couple of comments, but
Dale, I asked the question of our audience, and Dale commented back with community involvement, a volunteer fireman, and a firefighter, and EMT. Randy, by the way, Randy, EMT means he knows how to put a Band-Aid on way freaking better than you and I do. Just saying, man.
Good.
For 17 years, including he's using words that tell me Northeast, being involved in the his boroughs. I think that's Economic Development Council. So, and Chan, I've known Chan for, I think going on 12 or 15 years. For years, every Tuesday and Thursday, he would show up at a job search group in Greensboro. And I think for the last 3 years, he's been actively involved every Thursday, hour and a half, I think, in a job search group. And so I'll ask Chan if he can tell me in one word how that makes him feel. He can chat back and let me know. Back at you, buddy.
Yeah. And so not everything we do is direct to, feather our own nest and put money in our pocket. But, there's the altruistic component of that. But ultimately, if I'm hearing you right, Katherine, what goes around comes around, and the rising tide lifts all boats. And there is a lot of disparity, with financial, just crime, you name it, cost of housing. All around. And again, I don't know that anybody has all the answers to it, but that doesn't mean you can't try.
Right.
And I think one of the things that I've come to know from being in the best class ever from last year was, now that you are exposed to these things, now you're somewhat accountable. If you don't know things go on, you don't know what you don't know. But I've been exposed to some things, and the idea hopefully here is to say, hey, if I found something, can I do a little bit more to help in a certain area and find a place to plug in? Because we're not all engineers. We're not all, caretakers. And so we can help in a lot of different ways. Have you found that, I don't know, I'm just making this up as I go, but that people, when they look to volunteer, do they often look to do something totally different from what they do in their job, or do they look to leverage their job skills more in the kind of volunteering that they do?
I'd say it's pretty 50-50 split. Some people want to lean into where their resources and skills are most comfortable. Like when I was the marketing director for the Arts Council, I did that all day, every day. I live, sleep, eat, and breathed it. So I didn't necessarily want to do that on the side as well. I wanted to maybe develop my skill set in other areas because, I had some pretty basic talents as a journalism major from Carolina that I wanted to lean in and grow, and volunteering for another organization where I'm capitalizing on talents that I don't necessarily use in my job helped me to grow that skill set, which is another reason why volunteering and community engagement is important. It gives you an opportunity to really expand your horizons as well as your network and grow strong in areas you might not have the opportunity to explore in your career. But we have people, people that are most comfortable doing what they do professionally. If you're a CPA, you will always be tapped into by a nonprofit to serve on the finance committee or to be the treasurer, because you are like a high prize in the nonprofit world. Other people, they raise money professionally, so they don't/can't do that for another nonprofit. So they look for other ways to engage that's meaningful for them and helpful for the organization.
Teddy, we're halfway through. You want to take the break?
Yeah, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. A special guest today is Katherine Perry. The conversation is all about how to engage and be a part of your community. Our show is sponsored by Blackwell Captive Solutions. Carrie and her team are really good people. Their experience in health, insurance, business, their medical stop loss captive is a great way for organizations to put like what's referred to as a shock absorber on their high dollar medical claims. So if your organization, or if you know an organization who is self-insured on their healthcare insurance, you probably need to have a conversation with Blackwell Captive Solutions. And when you do talk with them, let them know that Teddy told you to give them a call. Back at you, buddy.
All right. So let's plow forward here a little bit more on this. How do we get engaged in the community? Love Out Loud, you mentioned that. Are there other entities, agencies that sort of serve to farm people out? How would if I'm sitting in a cubicle all day long and I'm in my comfortable rut, how do I know what is out there, and how do I make that initial contact?
I think it's important for somebody to evaluate what their wants and needs and availability is. So if you're in a cubicle all day, where do you want to apply what time you have? Do you want to work for an animal welfare organization because you're crazy about pets? Do you want to work for or volunteer for an organization like Crisis Control because you're very concerned about, our neighbors without walls? What is your passion? Where do you feel touched the most to serve? So after you figure out sort of what your interests are, where you feel like you would make the most difference, then I would either go straight to that organization, because Winston-Salem is flush with nonprofits. And part of the reasons why we have so many nonprofits is because we have some pretty significant issues in this community. And thankfully, we have a lot of organizations that are focused on working on those issues to try to improve them. So if you really are very concerned about the health and welfare and well-being of senior citizens, go to Senior Services, go to their website. Every nonprofit that has volunteer opportunities has it listed on their homepage. Another great resource is Hands-On Northwest North Carolina, which I believe their website is handsonnwnc.org. They do a lot of work with nonprofits. And if I'm not mistaken, they have a page that is dedicated to volunteer opportunities. And Teddy, if I'm completely wrong, please double back and check behind me.
I'll go get that data. I can find it.
Thank you. So think about, what time do you have? Is this something that you really only want to commit to once a month? Is it something you can do once a week? And that can sort of dictate where it is that you apply yourself within the confines of an organization, like Meals on Wheels. If you've consistently got time around lunchtime every Friday, like I did, that's a really great fit. If you only have lunchtime one day a week, not to say that I am the be all end all of all volunteer experiences, but that, I was like, I don't have a whole lot of bandwidth, but I can definitely do lunch once a quarter for the street school. So think about where it naturally and organically fits in your life and what your preferences are.
What about COVID? COVID hopefully is in the rearview mirror for the most part, but that changed a whole lot. And as far as people venturing out and getting engaged, what kind of vibe have you picked up from the community in how, I guess, the level of volunteerism has diminished, changed, or whatever, thanks to COVID?
Well, actually, we have seen a big shift in volunteerism. And I've been tracking this on a national level too, to see, is this
Okay.
just something we're seeing here at Leadership Winston-Salem? Is this something we're seeing at Forsyth County? But nationally speaking, there actually is a downward volunteering trend since COVID. I think part of it is because people have done a lot of introspective thinking about, I don't feel compelled to do anything that is not on the top of my priority list. So folks have reprioritized.
Mhm.
Hopefully that means they've reprioritized towards focusing, instead of spreading themselves, an inch over a mile, they're focusing more of their efforts on one organization rather than saying, I'm going to do a little something here and a little something there. They're focusing all of their time on just
Mhm.
one entity. That is my hope. I don't have any data to support that. And then I see where somebody asked if that trend is exacerbated in younger generations. I think, yes, sadly, what I'm seeing and what I've been hearing is there's a lot of focus on self for younger generations of people. And there's a lot less of the caring for others mentality. And it's more, there's a lot of emphasis being put on self-care. And I'm not saying that self-care is a bad thing. I think it's incredibly important. But I think people have sloughed off those things that they felt obliged to do and were doing strictly out of obligation. And a lot more focus on only exclusively what benefits them directly. And I see that a lot more in young people than I do in, generations like ours.
Well, yeah, and you add too also if they have young children, and then that creates some of the other I would have almost thought just the other way around, because you hear young people are more idealistic, and they're more in tune to the environment and all kinds of what I'll call social causes. And so maybe that's a lot of talk, but when it comes to taking time to impact, you're saying maybe they're not as they don't participate maybe at the same levels as other generations, if I'm hearing you right.
That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
However, I think any of this kind of discussion is very cyclical. So
Yeah.
the pendulum swings in one direction for a while and then a swing in the other direction. So, we're in a position right now, we are still recovering from the
Yeah.
pandemic and its effects. And so to that end, I think there are multiple classes of kids, my kids included, who really jump the rails. I mean, they are still trying to figure out just how to do the normal stuff, how to socialize with one another, how to take responsibility. And there is, I think, a lack, and I don't mean to poo-poo a whole generation of kids, and I'm speaking more specifically to my experience with my own kids, one of whom may or may not have asked me if digging holes in my backyard to put plants in counted as volunteer work. To which my answer was a firm no. That's called paying your dues, you little jerk.
Oh, we have to cut that out now, Catherine.
Sorry, you're gonna have to edit, but anyway, I think there's a lot of focus on just trying to figure out how to be and live in a sort of more normalized life now for these kids, because they were just so thrown for a loop for 2.5 years. And this impacted kids, and I mean all kids that were in school, in major ways, that it's going to take them a while to kind of get back to what is normal or what their new normal is.
And I think I'm with you, Catherine, and that your analogy of that pendulum, COVID came and smacked that pendulum all over the place. And, it's going to take not just time, it's going to take situations, conversations, self perspective, looking at myself and asking myself, am I giving enough? Should I start giving more? Should I start doing something different? And again, way more than time for that pendulum to get back into its normal trajectory. And I think it's important for us as involved in our community to keep asking these questions. What can we do? How can we do more? How can we help? How can we be different? How can we overcome so that we can, I don't use the word normal, so that we can get to a stage where we're doing a little bit more. We can never do enough, but can we do a little more?
Agreed.
Hey, I got one for you, and I'll kind of circle back to because that's the kind of work I do, which is workforce development. And I encounter clients from time to time, and again, I could talk for hours about this, but one of the ones is, especially when they don't have a network established, but they have time on their hands because they're not working. I encourage them to get involved with, volunteering somewhere. But also, you get the person who's kind of at that pivot point that doesn't know what they want to do when they grow up, kind of a thing, and all they know is that they don't want to keep doing what they've been doing. But they don't know what's next. They don't know exactly, and so I would, and maybe you've got other thoughts on this. Is I'd say, well, fine. Why don't you? You may not be hireable in a new field, a new job function, may not be hireable yet, but what if you were to volunteer in that new job function at a nonprofit? So at least now you've got something you can put on the resume that says, now I have marketing skills, for example, or now I have fundraising skills, or I have whatever, because I think, and it could be wrong, but nonprofits are more apt, because you're free, to say, great, come on, we need all the help we can get. Can you speak to that as far as, hey, if I'm a job hunter, how's this going to help me out with my next step?
Well, I think everything you just said is 100% accurate. You get, and something when you were talking about as a job hunter, how does this help you? And I mentioned a little earlier, leaning into skills that you might need to fine tune or polish or enhance by volunteering for an organization in a capacity other than the one you currently work in. Mm-hmm. I think that says a lot to an employer. It does help you become a more well-rounded employee. We've had several people, and this is slightly off track with what you're saying, but Leadership Winston-Salem, as part of a member of the flagship class, has a program that's called the Action Learning Project process, and people in teams of 8, so 8 folks from that whole class, will volunteer for an organization over the course of 9 months to work on a deliverable. In that course of 9 months, that little team of 8 people gets to know that nonprofit better than their board even does. And so at the end of the 9 months, that nonprofit will often go to that team of 8 people and cherry pick new board members from there. It is not uncommon for folks who have spent 9 months basically volunteering for an organization, getting to know that organization, to suddenly take a career shift and then decide to go to work for that organization that they've been volunteering for 9 months, now that they've gotten to know it. And so they finally find themselves like feeling really passionate about the work done by a nonprofit. And then they're like, I think I'm passionate enough about this that I want that to be my job rather than just be my volunteer opportunity. Again, volunteering for an organization really opens a lot of doors with regards to networking prospects. So you get to know the staff of an organization, sometimes the board of an organization, people on a board or within a volunteer unit of an organization get to know you and your skill sets. And so they think about you in terms of what you bring to the table and how you might benefit their organization. So if I'm on, and this is a pretty good example, I'm not a member of my board, but I have a 31-person board and I know all of them really well. So when I've had a vacancy here, because all of these people have been dedicating time and energy to me over the past at least 3 years, either on board members or as committee members, I'm like, who do I know in my board or on one of my committees who would really be a good fit for this opportunity that I have at my organization? Or who have I been contacted by other nonprofit organizations, even other for-profit organizations, who know that I've got all these volunteers that I've gotten to know really well, and they're asking me, I need a fundraiser, I need a human relations person, I need a human resources person, and that happens. I've been contacted by other orgs saying, who is the best HR person you know in town? And I'm like, well, it just happens to be someone who sits on my board, who I know as the chair of the personnel committee. And this person is the best that I have ever encountered. I connect the two of them. This person now has a brand new job. So yeah, volunteering is a way to really showcase your skills, to really shine a spotlight on you and do something fantastic for an organization that needs your skill set.
Yeah. And Teddy's got a cat bit his tongue, so he'll get.
By the way, Randy.
Yeah.
Katherine, you can't have those conversations with Randy. He's not looking for another job. Just saying. Especially on Wednesdays at noon.
No,
He's
I
already
have
got
to
two.
have to work around that. I think a lot of people are short-sighted, frankly. They're short-sighted. If I'm hungry, I'll ask you, give me some food versus getting to know something. In other words, if they need a job, it's okay, I'm going to pound out resumes, applications all day long. Nobody knows or cares who I am, and I'm just another applicant in the file. Versus what you've talked about, which is, okay, roll up your sleeves. Teddy, my sleeves are rolled up. See?
Look at you, man.
Roll up your sleeves, and whatever time you do have, you're somewhat planting seeds here, relationship wise. You're building new skills. You're again gaining insight as far as a nonprofit that apparently excites you in the first place. So plant that seed. Teddy, you said something that stuck with me all these years because I do pay attention to you from time to time. And you said, don't wait until you're thirsty to drill the well. And it's kind of the same thing here. If you're a job hunter and you just sit back and react to job openings, yeah, you may get a job that way. But what if you took your time and volunteered or did something proactive? And you just talked, Katherine, about some of the residual on that thing. You just never know where that next job's going to come from. But by getting out and being exposed to new folks and new organizations, your chances are up a lot, I would think. Wouldn't you, Teddy?
Absolutely. I mean, Randy, you know my mantra. I've never gotten a job through a job application. I've had to pay people to hire me. That's a whole other conversation for another day. But one of the things that, and I'm going to say it as clearly and appropriately as I can, Katherine, and that is your dollars and your time. Our dollars are important because nonprofits need funding. They need to make things happen. They need to, they need to turn the freaking lights on and it works, plug in the internet and it works. So our dollars are important to help nonprofits. But I think that can't be or should not be at the cost of our time. We've got to really, I see it. I know a lot of nonprofits. I've been involved and helped a lot of nonprofits. And I spent 5 years on the board at the local March of Dimes years ago. And I mean, it was a lot of freaking work, a lot of work to not only support the mission, but to support the programming that they did that generated the dollars. And so when in my opinion, I'm saying this publicly, my opinion, if we think just giving our dollars is all we need to do, then I challenge ourselves / me to ask, is that all I should do? Or should I be willing to break a little sweat?
Yep. Hey, we've got about 13 minutes left. We're going to ask you for some takeaways here in a while, but I want to talk leadership, Winston. I know you're in the membership drive now, so we're going to talk about our recruitment drive. So I want to talk about that. One other quick talking point you mentioned, is there an age limit to engagement?
Oh my gosh, no. Because if you start young, you avoid stupid questions like my kid asked, which is, does it count that I dug holes for you in your backyard as volunteer work? And I was like, no, but I'm not getting you a birthday present now. So
You're out of the will.
Kids volunteering, I think, gives them a great opportunity to see what's out there. I mean, to understand the community, to understand what their neighbors' needs are, to understand more about where their skills are and what they might want to do, when they go into college and beyond, if they decide to go to college, or maybe they want to go a different track. And the volunteer work says, you know what, I think I really want to be a mason, a plumber, an electrician, and volunteering in different fields gives kids an opportunity to sample life. All the way at the other end of the spectrum, people that are retired and beyond. Some of my best volunteers are people that are retired and have extra time on their hands and a lifetime worth of experiences to draw on. I refer frequently to my friend Alan Lindsay, who applied to the Leadership Winston-Salem program. He was retired. He said, I'm just an old retired guy. but he's super involved at his church. Things did not happen at his church without, Alan getting involved and making sure that they came to pass. He applied to the program, was accepted to the program, and he was just such a benefit to all the other people in the class to hear about his life and his life experiences and what it was like to be growing up in this community as a young, then middle-aged, then older African-American gentleman. And his perspective and input really drove a lot of really tough conversations and content that made everybody else around him grow. So insofar as, is there an age limit, too young or too old? Absolutely not. Start them off young, get them used to volunteering so that that is a part of their mantra, and then keep it going the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Let's pivot and we'll talk leadership. Winston, you're in the midst of a busy season. You're busy all the time, and let's face it, I know that, but this is extra special busy. So let's talk leadership. Winston, what is it? How can you get involved? Just you take it from here. Any way you want to take it.
Okay, so here's my song and dance. Leadership Winston-Salem is a community leadership development organization. I do not make leaders. I help leaders understand their community better. Our mission is to educate, connect, and energize leaders to serve and improve their community. So I take people who are already engaged, who have already demonstrated a willingness and an interest in making their community better, and I teach them more about the community than they probably would have had an opportunity to learn under ordinary circumstances, and introduce them to other change agents in our community who also want to see better for the whole community. We have two programs, Flagship Program and Insight. Flagship is what we're recruiting for right now. That is what, Randy, you are a graduate of our Flagship Program. So we are having information sessions, some virtual, some in person. More information can be found on our website, which is leadershipws.org. You can come to an info session, find out all about what makes Leadership Winston-Salem special. It's a 9-month program, so it is a time commitment, but I have heard more people than I can count say that this is a life-changing experience. You will meet people and work with people and talk to people and become super close friends with people that you will not have an opportunity to get to know under any other circumstances. You will learn things about the community that you didn't know before. Having been born and raised here and having family members here for generations and generations, I kind of thought I knew everything there was to know about Winston. And every single program day we have, I learn more, something new, something different, something I didn't realize before, even something about our history. Well, our history hasn't changed at all, but I don't know every single fact about Winston-Salem history. And I am so impressed that every year I get to learn more about this community through the lens and perspectives of people that are different from me. Yeah. So it is a great opportunity to learn more about Winston-Salem. We like to call it your community MBA. So once you go through the program, you become sort of an official member of our community trusteeship. You get to be a member of our alumni family and help go through different opportunities to engage, like Randy did at Habitat for Humanity on that build. We have special events exclusively for our Leadership Winston-Salem family members, like our Leadership Winston-Salem Book Club, our homecoming, our Leaders in Lunch opportunities. There's just a lot to be said for the family that comes out of participating in this experience. And we've been doing it since 1984. So I think we sort of know what we're doing.
Hey, it's another component of that. Oh, Teddy, yeah.
And go back to Dale. I think Dale asked this question, about the commonalities between Leadership Winston-Salem, Leadership Greensboro, Leadership High Point, Leadership Durham, Leadership XYZ. And I think that there's a lot of commonality, but there's also the individual uniqueness. Katherine, can you speak to that?
I can, and you're right. So all of these leadership fill in the blank towns, their mission, their objective is to train a group of people to know their community better, to encourage them and energize them and incite them to invest themselves more and to get to know other people in our community more. So to that end, because I saw his question come in earlier, it's not once you've done this leadership program, you've pretty much done them all, because each one of them is so finely focused on those things that make their community different, unique, special, or challenged. That, you know, if you live in Louisville Clemens and you do the Louisville Clemens leadership program, that's great for Louisville Clemens, but it doesn't speak to Winston-Salem. If you do the leadership triangle program, if you live in the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill area, that's great, but that's not like what you're going to find here. You're not going to get to know the leaders here. We make a special effort to put our class members in places they wouldn't have another opportunity to go to and hear from speakers they might not have another opportunity to speak with. I mean, I can remember hearing from the president of back in the day when it was Wake Forest Baptist Health. We heard from Julie Freischlag. And we heard from Chad Setliff, who's the president of Novant. And in a room where it was just the two of them and 63 of us. And I could ask a question of these people that I've been reading about in the paper. Or, you know, here I am a stone's throw from the chief of police, who, by the way, is a graduate of Leadership Winston-Salem class of 2020. Not many people have an opportunity to raise their hand and ask directly a question of Chief Thompson when it was Katrina Thompson, or Chief Penn, now that it is Will Penn. And you get those opportunities in this leadership program. So there is a lot of difference from program to program. It's not a one size fits all. Now, where Leadership Winston-Salem is different in some interesting ways, our organization was started in 1984 by the president of Wake Forest University, Thomas Hearn, Julius Corpening, who was the mayor, and Ed Pleasance, who is actually serves in board of director emeritus position for us. And they decided to have this organization totally separate from the Chamber of Commerce. It is its own 501c3, so we're not affiliated with the Chamber or Greater Winston-Salem Inc. at all.
Yeah. Hey, and a component of this that we haven't really talked about, we don't have a lot of time, but just to acknowledge it, is you've got to have cooperation from the business community. If Goodwill, for example, I mean, they paid for my ability to attend. And also that you have donations, and that helps to offset the cost of tuition. But Goodwill had to allow me the time away from work to take part in the program. So time and money, if you don't have companies who buy into this and who, you know, see the value in it, you don't have people.
That's right.
So it takes the other side too, the businesses.
We are very fortunate that we have all of our major employers in town that send people through our program every year. We always have people from Wake Forest, Salem College, Forsyth Tech, the city, the county, both of the hospitals, several of our financial institutions, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the faith community. Every year we'll put people through this program. Yeah. So there's a lot of value to be had.
Hey, just real quick, a takeaway or two, real quick. One or two things you want people to remember about today.
I want anybody that is interested in finding out more about Leadership Winston-Salem and the opportunity to learn more about their community and get to know other leaders to go to our website, leadershipws.org, sign up for an information session, and let's have a conversation. I love meeting people for coffee, and I'd love to meet you. The other thing I would like to remind people is that what helps others helps you. Again, all ships rise with a swelling tide. And it's important to engage in our community, because our community is, we all live here. If you help your neighbor, you're helping yourself.
Yep, I get you. And my Teddy, just a quick thought here to wrap up. By the way, thank you, Catherine, for coming by. Is get in the game. Yeah. In fact, Kevin was in our class. I think that's his nonprofit, was get in the game, encouraging youth to get involved and whatnot. But the whole idea here is, you know, we too often, I use the word comfortable rut. We get doing our job, we have our family, whatever, and the outside world just exists. But yet there are ample opportunities to get involved. But you got it. It starts with you, and you have to say, I'm going to get off the bench, get in the game, and there's a spot for you. There's a spot for everybody if you're so willing to give of your time. Teddy, what you got? And we've got a great guest next week.
Let me share my quick thought real quick, and then you do the who's coming up, and then I'll do the ad spot. Randy knows this. I don't know if Catherine does or anybody else in the audience knows. I participated in raising $4. And my mantra to these 4 daughters the whole time I was in charge or involved, not in charge, involved with raising them, I said this one thing: I want you to go do whatever you want to do in life, as long as you're a contributing member to society. That's,
There you go.
however you want to do that. And maybe it's volunteering while you're selling dust bunnies or, whatever you want to do for create revenue, but you've got to be a contributing member of society. That's all I ever asked of my daughters. So, Randy, who's coming up this week?
Yeah, and then we're going to kind of tie in a little bit with Katherine, with Leadership Winston. Our guest next week is Antonia Monk-Richburg, the president and CEO of United Way of Forsyth County. Relatively new on the job here in the last, year plus. But again, they have their finger on the pulse of a lot of the nonprofits and a lot of the needs in our community. So we're going to talk with her about what brought her here and some of the initiatives they're working on with United Way. So we'll look for that next week. Katherine, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Good to talk to you again. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Yeah. So Teddy, take us out here. What you got?
Cool. Hey, we appreciate our audience. We appreciate all the engagement and the conversations. Katherine, again, thank you very much for joining us. Randy, good to see you get your hair cut. Blackwell Captive Solutions is our show sponsor. They're all about helping businesses who have self-insured for healthcare, insurance, ownership, peace of mind, price stability. Reach out to blackwellcaptive.com and have a conversation with them if you and your organization are self-insured. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. We'll see you next week.
All right. See you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
All right.